Good evening, happy weekend, etc., etc. Where we are, as usual, streaming on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. So I'll be answering questions from all those places. And one question I have from TikTok is, have I read David Ferris's book, It's Time to Fight for Dirty? Yes, I have. I read it years ago when it came out. And I, in fact, know David a little bit. Sorry, I need to adjust something, so a brief pause. There we go. What's my favorite black and white film stock? It is Ilford XP2 Super, which is what it calls. It's a chromogenic black and white, meaning it's basically a color style emulsion with the dye removed. And it has more grain in the shadows than traditional black and white does, but it holds highlights like color films. So basically the highlights, it's hard to overexpose the highlights, which for how I expose film, which is I usually always expose at about half of box speed to get more shadow detail. And so it's like you can get all the shadow detail you want, and the highlights almost never get overexposed. So I like it a lot. And if I were still doing darkroom printing, you can darkroom print this film as well, just like you would any black and white, traditional silver emulsion. So it's great. My favorite color film is not my favorite, but you might describe me as like a little bit OCD, and so I like to have uniformity across my film stocks across formats. And so I just use Kodak Gold because you can get that in 120 and 35 millimeter. My favorite anime opening is Cowboy Bebop. Do I see black as a class identity as well as a racial identity? Not really. I mean, I don't really want to go into my whole... In the American context, I see... How do I put this? Like, what's the Stuart Hall line? Race is the modality through which classes lived. That's basically how I think about it. Gonna go to a parade this weekend. For Memorial Day. There's not really Memorial Day parades around where I live. Do I play any new JRPGs? It's funny. I don't really. I guess I have the Final Fantasy VII remakes that I need to get to, but for the most part, I play old stuff. Although I'm excited about this new Lego Batman movie. Not Batman. This new Lego Batman game. I really want to play that. Any plans to go on blank check this year? Stay tuned, my friends. I've been meaning to check out Octopath Traveler. I go back and forth about whether I want to invest the time, you know? And there's that new like Zelda style action RPG that Square Enix is doing for Switch 2 that I'm interested in. I'm playing this one and not OG Tactics. A, because I have OG Tactics for Switch, and I don't like to double up on games like that, you know. So what I mean is, if I already have a file open on my Switch, I'm not going to try to like open something new here. But also, Tactics Advanced lends itself way to my style of playing for these streams, which is sort of like very slow and not consistent. One thing I've been thinking about since watching Sinners is that black people in this country constitute both an ethnic group with shared ancestry, history, and culture, as well as a racial group. Yeah, that's basically the case. I mean, this confuses people. I don't understand why it confuses people, but it does confuse people because black is this arbitrary racial category. But then also it refers to like a distinct and coherent people in the country, which is why I read this terrible piece for Unheard that was defending the Supreme Court's decision in Clay v. Louisiana, saying that, you know, finally the court has stopped the Democratic Party from treating people as monolithic racial groups. And it's like majority minority districts are not the reason why Black Americans consider themselves a coherent group. That is history. That's the reason for it. Their history in this country, the specific circumstances of their arrival in this country. But yeah, it's a coherent national group, you might say, Black Americans, as well as being this racial category, and that confuses people because, you know, for example, someone like me will say, well, race is fake, it's biologically fake. It's purely social construction. In that sense, doesn't mean it doesn't have material effects, but social construction. But then also, black people are their own thing, meaning a coherent national group. It seems very straightforward to me, but a lot of people find it not so much. Yeah, that's stupid. You can say you're black because you're not saying that you're a color. You're saying like this. I mean, this is relatedly. This is why I don't like referring to when you're talking about sort of African nations, right? Like I don't like referring to them as black because in a sense they're not. They're racially black, but they are a particular culture, particular nationality, or a particular ethnicity, wherever that may be in the African continent. And so, some time ago, J.D. Vance, some of you may remember this, J.D. Vance was like, why doesn't Bowie appreciate Trump for ending wars in Africa? And this very kind of like racist, well, they're black, he's black. And it's like, that's not how this works. Less serious question. What is my hat budget per month? I don't have a hat budget. I just pick up things as I see them, as they seem interesting to me. So this hat, this is Macross. You may recognize that. And I picked this up, where did I pick this up? I picked this up in some random anime website. What kind of impact on discourse do I think the shooting near the White House tonight will have? I have no idea. I mean, no attempts on Trump's life have had any meaningful impact on the discourse, so I don't expect this one to either. Oh, I forgot to check what the someone asked me if I'm playing this on an emulator. Yes, I'm playing this on an emulator. Thoughts on mech animes? I like them. I like mechs. I like military hardware. Multiple people asking me if I'm going to be on Blank Check. I think the plan for me is I will be on Blank Check at some point this year. Not for Master and Commander. Sorry to disappoint y'all. But for something. If I could pilot one mech from an anime, which would it be? I mean, you guys know what it's gonna be. It's gonna be the RX-72, baby. Favorite Gundam series? Favorite Gundam series? It's 100% the 8th MS team. I like Zeta just fine. I enjoy Zeta quite a bit, but 8th MS Team is my favorite. Have you heard Ben Tarnoff and Quinn Slobodians discuss a new book on Muskism where they talk about the mech as a piece of his ideology? I have not. I have their book on my shelf. I have a couple things I need to get through before I can read it, but I would like to read it. Oh, this is a very Jamel relevant question. Summer sweaters, jackets, how do I wear them in the Southeast? I feel like I always get toasty. So I don't really wear sweaters when it gets warm. I don't really wear sweaters that much. I have my sweater vest that I wear under jackets and stuff, but that's the extent of it. But for wearing summer jackets, it's all about the lightweight, baby. Linen, seersucker, linen cotton blends, linen wool blends. There's a Kamakura has a jacket in the tropical wool that I am really interested in. But don't look past seersucker. Lately, way more brands are making seersucker very casual suits in sort of non-traditional colors like browns, navies, olives, creams. So you can wear something in seersucker. It doesn't look costumey like the traditional blue, white striped looks. Over at TikTok, we got a question. What would make you say this is getting too hot, time to leave the country? I don't know. Journalists getting rounded up, I suppose. That would probably be the thing to do it. I played the Dragon Quest III remake. I mean, I still have the file ongoing. What do I think is the best TV streaming drama of the 2020 so far? I don't really watch. This is not. I don't really watch a lot of TV, so I have no answer to this. Yeah, right. My favorite TV show is also movies. Lots of people curious about where I get my hats. I just get them where if I see an interesting hat somewhere, I get it. Sometimes I seek out things because I want something sort of like specific. Like I was wearing an AOL Instant Messenger hat not long ago, and I specifically sought that one out on eBay. But generally speaking, I just, you know. And Chris, this game was never on PS1. You're thinking of just regular old Final Fantasy Tactics. This is a what they call a side story. It's like a spin-off game. And movie wise, actually, so I was like doing really well with watching a movie close to a movie a day through March. And then I kind of fell out of it. So I need to get back in my movie watching. Maybe this summer I'll do that. I've been on this like rewatching the Hood movies of the early 90s. So I watched Menace to Society because I have the Criterion. I watched South Central, which I had only seen once. So it's kind of nice seeing it again. And I just picked up a 4K Blu-ray of Juice. If you're asking me what game it is, it should say right on the screen. You just gotta look. Good night. My favorite Scorsese movie, it is that's a good question. That's a very good question. Probably The Last Temptation of Christ. Yeah. I love After Hours. And I'm like the handful of people who loves his remake or take on the whatchamacallit, Cape Fear. Am I an SP guy or the original Game Boy Advance? So I'm old enough to have I had an original Game Boy Advance when that came out. And then I ended up getting an SP, and then I also have the Game Boy Advance like minis, like the micro ones. Kundan, I liked it. I'm pretty excited about the Apple TV Cape Fear revival. I just love the Cape Fear story. I think it's like such an, yeah, it's an interesting story. And if you've never seen the original, it's great. Have I ever had cats? No. Yes, I stream too, although I'm afraid I'm not going to have I'm afraid that I'm not going to have much in the way of a schedule, just because I can't be predictable about these things. Mostly because I have to like sleep at a certain point, right? And I'm busy throughout the day. So you can like reliably assume, and I like to watch movies, right? So you can reliably assume that I'll probably try to do one of these every Saturday. Not next Saturday because I'll be out of town. But I'm going to try reliably to do one of these every Saturday. And I'm going to try to do, since here is a little insight into my schedule. my column runs on Wednesday. And so Monday, Tuesday, Sunday really are big research writing days for me. But Wednesday, I tend to sort of chill, and I do either, if I have to record something or do something like that, I do that on Wednesday. So I'm also going to shoot for like an hour long, hour and a half long stream every Wednesday afternoon. So Wednesday afternoons and Saturday nights is looking like where this can be feasible. Because that's the closest thing I can give you to a schedule when I'll be doing this stuff. What was my grocery store growing up? It was the Navy Commissary. And I don't read much fiction. Is a watch collection part of my menswear interest at all? Like, hypothetically, yes. In practice, I like my Apple Watch. I like keeping track of all the fitness stuff. And so I may start collecting watches to wear when I'm like going out, like if I am going out to an event, or if I'm going out on a date with my wife, that kind of, my wife, that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I just wear the Apple Watch. Yo, Jamel, currently watching while I take the first shift with my 1-month-old daughter. Any big new parent advice tips you could share? I mean, this is something that helped me out quite a bit. No one ever tells you this. But you're... like in the first 6 months, you really are playing the support role. Like your kid barely knows that you exist. They're focused on their mother. Assuming, you know, this is the traditional household in that sense. And it can feel, I feel like it can maybe feel a little alienating when your kid just is like not interested in you at all. They will be eventually. But you're just kind of in a support role. And so I think you should embrace the support role. Embrace being the person who can take a load off of your wife's back as much as possible. Embrace being the person who can just like make this quite difficult period of your lives easier. No, that's what I did, and it worked for us. Someone's asking me, a non-American asking me, what is the definition of date? It just means you're going out to dinner, that kind of thing. So I didn't grow up on base, but my parents worked on base, and it was just, you know, it's easier to go to the commissary than it is to go out to some random grocery store. I can't even recall ever going to a real grocery store, like a non-military grocery store, when I was a kid. I guess we went to there's a Food Lion down the street, and so Food Lion. But otherwise, yeah, the commissary. Do I have any advice on the transition from 1 to 2? I don't, we kind of just jumped right into it. I mean, a date usually refers to like going out to a place. So like you're going out to dinner, you're going out to a movie, you're going out to a show, that kind of thing. Going to a museum. Yeah, don't treat the oldest one different. This goes with the kids. You know, what we did with our son is, who's my oldest, we had his younger sister, his baby sister, deliver him a gift, like give him a gift that obviously we bought, but sort of like that really helped him kind of be like, oh, this is a friend, right? This is someone who is not taking anything away from me. Back to this question about date. Yeah, so if you go to dinner with a friend, that can be a friend date. I mean, it's not a romantic date, or it could be. I don't know your situation, but generally, date refers to like a romantic engagement with someone you are in a romantic relationship with, whether that be a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, what have you. In America, is it acceptable to date multiple people concurrently? I got no idea. I have not been in the dating scene. How old am I? 39. How long have I been with my wife? I've been with my wife for 16 years. I've been partnered for 16 years, my friend. So I got no idea. I didn't say 26 years. I said 16 years. 16. But we met actually before I even got into journalism. So If the U.S. Mint were to print a $7 bill, whose face would you put on it? I would put Frederick Douglass's face on it. Easy, easy. I mean, I would put Frederick Douglass's face on any new bill of any kind. Easy, easy, easy answer, you know? We talked about the DNC draft autopsy a couple streams ago. I said that it was a whole lot of nothing and that there was no conspiracy behind it. It was just a poorly written report, and that Ken Martin probably shouldn't have his job. We are still owed Tubman on a bill. That's right. I'd also put Nat Turner on money. That'd be fun. Forbidden fight? Are you kidding me? Christ. I hope Dem incompetence and rep evility, interesting word, create space for a third option. That's just not how the system works. It's just not. This is not how the system works. If you want space for a third party, you actually have to mechanically change the way that elections work. That's it. No other option. The reason why I have two parties is a function of the mechanics of the American political system. And yeah, if you don't want that, you got to change those mechanics. But partisan loyalty is incredibly strong. And I'll put it this way. the Democratic Party more or less help produce the Civil War, and was still a viable party less than a decade out, right? Like, yeah. It's a combination of mechanisms in the American political system. It is our single member districts. It is our first past the post voting. It is the presidency, a singular prize, which requires winning a majority of the Electoral College. I'm not dodging the question. Anyway, the Electoral College, whose majority requirement it demands sort of building a large enough coalition to win that majority. And so that's pretty much it. If you want multipartyism, you have to figure out something. You have to figure out how to deal with those mechanics. In the absence of that, you're gonna get two parties. Again, more Osborne non-D but caucus with D types is not necessarily going to get you third parties. What that will get you is candidates who are basically there on the strength of their personalities and maybe whatever particular specific organization built around them. But that's not a party. If you want like a political party, like a mass organization, then you have to have a system that encourages the development of those political parties. And ours doesn't. Ian, I think I answered the question. The Electoral College and the presidency. The UK doesn't have those things. We do, and that does it. Ranked choice has not yet produced any of the conditions for developing new parties. Ranked choice allows for, in primaries, right? Sort of like it allows for more options when choosing party nominees. But it doesn't do that either. But it hasn't worked yet to encourage the development of new political parties. Yes, over in TikTok, Amber mentions fusion. Fusion would do it. Like fusion can encourage the development of new political parties. Someone asked me about leadership change within the DNC. This is like my most unpopular opinion. Whenever I voice it, people get really upset with me. But like the DNC doesn't matter. Or I'll put it this way. The DNC as it exists, the RNC as it exists, these things do not matter. They have no particular impact on American politics. They are glorified, they're glorified committees. So, like, will there be a leadership change in the DNC? Maybe. Do I think it matters? Not really. Which would I prefer, socialist or corporate? I don't even know what that means. I feel like this is a really, and I know I'm streaming online, But I feel like this is a really, I feel like this is a really online way of thinking about the question. It's a very online distinction that you're making, right? That like either you're a socialist or you're a corporate Democrat. And it's like, what does Nolan, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. It's a very simple question. You can just clarify what you mean. You can just say, this is what I mean by socialist. This is what I mean by corporate. And then I can give you an answer. But repeating, which would you prefer, socialist or corporate, it's going to get the same answer from me. I don't know what that means. I don't know if we're working with the same definitions. I don't know if we're thinking about the same things. So you gotta add more. Game's not frozen, I'm just talking. Returning to an old favorite, if he means Bernie or Newsom, then he should say that. He should say that that's what he means, and then we can discuss it. I plan on updating my letterbox tomorrow when I get a moment. Right, and you'll notice, Chaos Dunk, that our corporate or socialist person has not actually taken my invitation to sort of clarify what he means. In any case, if you like, just read anything I like write, the things I write. If you listen to the things I say, the answer to that question, such that it's a real question, would be pretty obvious. I'm always bemused by this idea people seem to have that like my political views are mysterious, or that like I'm not very clear about what I think about things. No, and this is very simple. All you gotta do is tell me what you mean. You're clearly still tuning into the stream. And I am saying to you, I know you're asking a genuine question, and I'm saying to you, I don't know what you mean. All you have to type is an additional statement saying, I mean X and I mean Y. That's all you got to say. But like saying corporate or socialist, like this is a legible question to anyone but whoever is engaged in like whatever online discourse this comes from. It's like I'm not being stubborn here. I'm asking you, we're engaged in a conversation. I'm asking you to do a very simple engage in a conversation thing to provide additional clarity. Okay, what's your opinion of a corporate dem? You need to, okay. What is a corporate dem? Tell me what that means. What for you is a corporate dem? Who is an example of a corporate dem? What does that mean? See, was that so hard? Gavin is a corporate. I'm not a big fan of Gavin Newsom. Yeah, I don't think he's been a particularly effective governor of California. I think when you look at California's big problems, namely its housing crisis, he's not been particularly effective. So I'm not a fan of Gavin Newsom. But do you see how this is much more constructive? Like, rather than asking some big, broad, vague question, say, what do you think of these specific people? And then I can tell you what I think of those specific people. What do you think of this specific tendency? That I can tell you what I think about this specific tendency. What? Okay, you've given me an example of someone you think is a corporate dem, Gavin Newsom, and now you're asking me, is Gavin Newsom a corporate dem in my opinion? But here's the thing: I don't use the term corporate dem. That's not like a category that like I use to analyze politics. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of meaningless. Like what does. I'll put it this way: Vermont has, like a lot of New England, have like a lot of historic gun manufacturers. And when he was in the House of Representatives and to in the Senate, Bernie has maintained like a pretty lenient stance on gun rights, on gun possession, all that stuff. And that's almost certainly in part both because his constituents are like pro-gun, and because like the gun industry is like a relevant concern in his area. So like does a attention to the concerns of a major constituency and interest in his state make him a corporate dem because that interest is corporate in some sense? Like, I do not particularly favor Gavin or Hakeem Jeffries or Richie Torres, but that has like, this is what I mean. But that has like no, like, I don't know what does corporate leaning mean. Like, I don't favor them for like the substantive positions they've taken. I don't favor them for their like general political approach. I don't favor them because I think they are not necessarily up to the moment, but like, are they corporate? Like, I don't know. It's not something it's not like a thing that I care about. The fringes of the party are more exciting candidates. This is another like frustration to find. Sorry, old mud soul, but like, they doesn't trot out anyone, right? Like, people like, political parties in this country barely exist, as if you're thinking them in terms of like mass membership parties with like coherent ability to like compel action from anyone. Like, no, people run, and so like, how do I put this? If you don't like, if like, if the candidates are not inspired, it's not because like some group of people was like not providing good candidates. It's because like the people you might want to run are not running. Garrett, my political views are very obvious. I'm like a social democrat, like straightforwardly. I've written much about how I think we ought to have like an extraordinarily more generous welfare state, why we need to have like high tax rates to sort of like reduce the influence of the super wealthy. I've written about like sort of making space for experiment, sort of democratically controlled firms. You know, like, I believe in I have a robust and like maximalist vision of what individual freedom can mean. I'm a social democrat with like Frederick Douglass tendencies. Nolan, I'm not asking you to like me or anything. I'm not actually sure that you're trying to understand my stance, because what you seem to want, it seems to me, is you seem to want some sort of like me to say I stand against corporate Dems, but I'm not gonna say that. That's like a thing about me you will learn if you're not. I mean, whatever people will learn is that like I'm generally allergic to voicing shibboleths. Like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm kind of stubborn in that regard. If what you want me is to say like a magic phrase that will let you know that like I have the right views, you're never going to hear that magic phrase. You can ask me questions about my views on things. You can ask me questions about like the candidates that I like or dislike, but like, it's not going to be a thing where I'm gonna again give you a shibboleth. Shibboleth is from the Hebrew Bible. if you're genuinely trying to understand where I stand, then ask me a specific question about something on which you would like to know where I stand. This, I'll note, like, I think this is the better approach to evaluating candidates as well. I think you get in trouble. I think it's easy to get in trouble if a candidate presents themselves as sort of like, oh, I'm a populist Dem. I'm like an anti, they use labels and shibboleth, and then their actual material views are like off. They're not great. So I strongly encourage you to ask a question about something of substance that you want to know my views on. That's going to be the best way for you to do it. I'm not trying to be difficult. Oh, someone asked if the DNC doesn't matter about congressional fundraising. Fundraising is done primarily by the candidates, not the DNC. In fact, in point of fact, our political system would probably be better off if the party committees did control more of the fundraising and it was more centralized. But as it stands, it's extremely decentralized. This is the thing about the American party system, such that it is. It's extremely decentralized. Am I wary of Plattner? No, I got caught up in the game. I think that tattoo is bad, man. I don't know what it means. Like it's and I don't necessarily think I think the guy's like a Nazi or anything. I do think that not getting it removed prior to just like running for office is like a sign of just sort of like someone not thinking very hard. And so that just like, I'm sort of wary about that, but like, I have no sense. I don't know. If I lived in Maine, I'd probably vote for Plattner. That would probably, if I live in Maine, yeah, I'd be voting for him in November, but I don't know, man. KS Dunk, I think that's right. I think Plattner's a great example of how you can't judge politicians by the socialist corporate binary. I think it's exactly right. Do I have thoughts on Democrats widening the tent in order to create a broader base of support for some of the more popular positions as an inroad to electoral viability? If I understand what I think you're saying here, I think that's sort of like, okay, so I sort of fundamentally think that's like the wrong way to think about the Democratic Party's problem, which is like not so much like widening the tent, narrowing the tent, whatever. The problem is that the Democratic Party doesn't have or hasn't organized a like reliable social base, right? That can sort of like be a force that supports it supports Democratic candidates on the ground, that acts as sort of like a force multiplier for campaigns. Like Republicans have this, it's evangelical Christians and evangelical churches. The Democrats had this when it was unions, and they don't. And that absence of a kind of larger party infrastructure to do these things, it isn't formal, but it's like tied in with the party itself, means that a lot of this, to my mind, is sort of like, it's besides the point. Widening the tent, I guess, like you adjust your messaging to try to attract more people. That's always fine. That's always good, I suppose. But this lack of a reliable social base is really the problem, as I see it. So the Democratic Party's most reliable voters is black women, but like base it's an interesting term because it's not simply reliable voters. It's sort of the people engage, or the groups engage in kind of like para-party work. Right, that's the thing. The Democratic Party is this like very ideologically and socially heterogeneous group, and so it's going to be difficult to wrangle to begin with. But anyway, this question being asked: do I believe candidates like AOC, El Sayed are the right direction towards the party should be moving? I think AOC, yes. I don't know a ton about El Sayed, but like from what I've seen, sure, yes. But again, I do judge these things on sort of like a candidate by candidate basis, and not simply on sort of like whatever label they decide to slap onto themselves. I don't rep the DMV. I don't live anywhere near the DMV. This is the thing where people don't quite understand how big Virginia is. So if you assume that Northern Virginia begins, I would say in Fauquier County is when I'd say Northern Virginia officially begins. And I am a solid 2 hours away from where you could say Northern Virginia begins. And as far as the DMV goes, which I kind of associate with like Highway 66, I-66, going into the district, and as well as the 95 corridor beginning in Fredericksburg, then I am like a solid 2.5 hours from the DMV. I'm in Central Virginia. What I'm tied about more is that I think populism is the right approach for political messaging, but I think populism is bad for governance, right? So a good example is the Dems who are like trying to run on tax cuts right now. I think the tax cut populist message makes sense as far as messaging goes, right? Sort of like, yeah, people like lower taxes, tax relief for the middle class. But I think it's a terrible idea as far as governance goes. Awful idea. I really like this term slopulism because I think it gets at sort of like how the need and populist rhetoric for identifiable villains and easy solutions lends itself to just bad policy making. Do I believe that third partyism could push the Democrats towards a more progressive platform? Here's another unpopular opinion I have. I think what will push Democrats towards a more progressive platform is just like winning more elections. And I mean winning more elections, period. Period. Each election you win opens up the space for moving further in your preferred direction, right? That doesn't mean there's not going to be fights, and that doesn't mean it's not going to be difficult. But it opens up the space and it creates higher expectations. And when you lose, you close the space. And so ultimately, I think the path to a more progressive Democratic Party, meaning a Democratic Party where the political left just has like more of a greater influence on the shape and direction of it, is winning. It's first kind of left-wing candidates winning elections and demonstrating that they can govern and everything. But it also just like straight up just means winning elections, like period. Right, and it won't move further left uniformly. I really do think that because everyone engages with politics through like online discourse, there's sort of like a lack of, I wouldn't say knowledge or understanding, but sort of like people, it's a big country. And so some parts of the Democratic Party are going to move left, others won't. It's going to be shaped by region. It's going to be shaped by all kinds of things. No, Stony, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that like part of the reason American politics has moved so far right is right wingers making an organized effort to sort of capture the Republican Party, but it's also Republicans just like winning elections. And I have no idea why Spamberger vetoed the collective bargaining bill. My hunch is that she is hyper self-aware about her declining approval ratings and thinks it's because she's been identified too much as a partisan Democrat, and so she therefore has to do things that feel like anti-partisan. But like to me, that's behaving like a dumb pundit and not thinking about how voters actually relate to governance and governing. If she's worried about her popularity, the thing to do is to avoid as much conflict and controversy as possible. And so that means not needlessly poking a finger at Democratic priorities, which is going to create the kind of controversy and conflict that'll make people think in kind of a vague way that something's not right in Richmond. Do I have any takes on data center opposition becoming politically salient? Should Dems push reforms controls? This is where sort of like my whole thing about populist rhetoric versus populist policy, right? I think Democrats should totally lean into public discontent and anger with data centers and AI. I think it's there on the table. Yeah, it's free real estate, right? Just like run against it, right? Do I think that? Do I think that? How do I put this? The policy question when it comes to data centers, though, is a little more is a little more complicated, right? And so, data centers are simply part of modern day infrastructure. And so how you deal with that in terms of policy is going to be like a little more nuanced than simply like running against them. Someone asked me what book I would recommend for someone who wants to learn more about Frederick Douglass. Read David Blight's bio. Single best book you could read about Frederick Douglass. No better option. David Blight is the author, historian of the Civil War, and it is his biography of Frederick Douglass. Yes, Manning's book is worth a read. It's great. I forgot to check what the... Well, we'll figure it out. The last system I got for myself was a Switch 2. Speaking of Miller Lights, I thought it was very funny that that guy was like, Bowie got freaked out over my piece. It's like, no, bro. I thought your tweet was stupid. It's very simple. Oh, exclusively for myself. I mean, my kids are gonna inevitably play with it because they want to play Mario Kart, but like, I bought it for myself. I mean, you know, I don't know that guy's life, but he just screams incredibly self-conscious about being a professional writer. Like, yeah. That's the only way you would write something like that Miller Lite piece. It's very strange. Royal Rumble TAH v TCW. Whoever wins, we loses. Mark Nato, a lot of people seem to have a real complex about me specifically. It's very strange. Meat slurm. I think that's right, and I think the reason why I think that's right, not to be like self-aggrandizing, is that you notice with these people, like to go back to the Tyler Austin Harper post about me. So like my post was simply, this is a weird, self-hating, self-loathing tweet. Just drink your Miller Lite like a normal person. And then he responds to it by being like, Jamel's freaking out. He freaks out every quarter about me. He's upset. All these things. He's sort of like trying to create this impression that I'm hysterical, basically. And that dynamic where my 99% of the time, like dismissiveness, wry observation, snide remark even, is played up, is presented as an example of hysteria. That dynamic really makes me think that what they're responding to is a sense of normalcy on my part. They have to kind of like push against it. The problem, right, is that like I don't exist on blue sky. Like I exist in many places, many of them video and audio, and so like people can like very clearly see my demeanor, and my demeanor is not someone who is in hysterics. In fact, the extent to which I'm never in hysterics seems to upset people sometimes. But it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me the way I'm very clearly kind of like I am a object of like derision, but also like obvious jealousy for like a set of writers who hang out on X and seem to just be like constantly indulging or exclusively indulging their various resentments towards people. Right, I'm like I like represent blue skyism, whatever that is. He's not dumb, he's just rotted his brain with contrarianism is all. I think the other thing is that like I don't I mean, in fairness, I'll say this. In fairness to people on the internet who do not like me, which is that like I can be kind of harsh in my assessments, right? Like I don't really, I don't not pull punches when it comes to like assessing people who I think make bad arguments or who are not good at writing or whatever. And I'm frankly, I'm like this in person too. I just don't really have the capacity to like engage in niceties for their own sake. Yeah, it's a Keychron. I've had this thing for years. I kind of want to buy a new mechanical keyboard for no other reason than that. Um, I'm just bored with this one, but it's a perfectly decent mechanical keyboard. I didn't freeze. I'm just really still sometimes. Yeah, I do think the takes economy incentivizes contrarianism and incentivizes a lot of really bad habits, I'd say. I I've been thinking. I mean, as with this part of the conversation, I've just been thinking about what what is up with so many commentators online, and I do wonder if it's just like people look for validation from online. Look for validation from audiences. Look for validation from followers, from people who are prominent online or whatnot, and in general, sort of just like don't seem to know how to react to people who don't. Like I don't. You know, I do these things, right? Like I'm streaming here and I do these videos And obviously I write my column and I post and such, but like that's sort of that's like work more than anything else. And I do it because I think it's important to engage as someone who is trying to model habits of discourse, talk about American politics in a more nuanced way. I think it's important to do this stuff everywhere I can. But like at the end of the day, I hang out with my kids and my wife, and I don't worry too much about online. Like to go back to today's little mini drama, I didn't even notice the Harper post until I signed back on after sort of like spending the day with my family. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I never played Onimusha Tactics. Uh, check that out. I did try. I tried the initial XCOM. I guess like remake whatever from like 10 years ago, and I had a really good time with it. Um, the sequel seemed like it might be too difficult, so I didn't play it. And I have Sea of Stars on my Switch, and I enjoyed it. I mean, you can tell which writers think that social media is the whole world, and it's in their writing. Like they seem to be responding. They seem to be responding to people on like Twitter and not actually anything out in the world. What do I think of A People's History of the U.S.? I think it's a fine book for when you're 17, but um, I think Zinn's insistence on trying to kind of present U.S. history as like a bottom up, conflicts between the bottom and elites ends up distorting some important things. For example, I think his view of the Civil War and of Lincoln in particular is just like wrong. So it's funny for someone. I worked at Slate for like 5 years, um, and I'm like not a contrarian at all. I'm stubborn about things, but I'm not like a contrarian. XCOM Chimera Squad. Huh. Yeah, online isn't real life. It just isn't. And I know this because I spend a lot of time in the real world, and people are not constantly talking about online, and a lot of people are hardly aware of online discourses. Oh. No, Battle Cry Freedom is still great. No, I am emulating this on my Mac. I do not have the wherewithal to put something together, connect my Switch to my computer. I'm too lazy. I did play this back on the Game Boy Advance back in the day, and the David Potter book on the Civil War, The Impending Crisis, is still vital. Still a great book. All right, guys, I'm about to pass out. So I'm going to bed. Thank you for joining, as usual. I don't know if I'll be back next week just because I'll be in Cambridge, UK. But if I have time next week, I'll try to stream next week at some point.